Hokage I'll become stronger when I'm fishing. Chapter 421-441. Chapter 421. Akainu is killed. But at this moment, Yagami Kangdo's killing intent has been decided. On the one hand, Doberman was originally Akainu's subordinate, so it goes without saying that he had a grudge with Akainu. On the other hand, in the Navy, it was Akainu who inherited the position of Marshal of the Warring States period. He was naturally the Marshal of the two generations before and after. The primary goal. Boom. After repelling Garp and Zephyr, Yagami Soto pulled out Murasama, and swept his sword towards Akainu. This sword swung out, directly stirring the entire void in front of it to a pulp, making the area of several hundred meters in a radius, showing a state of space visible to the naked eye. Under this blow, Akainu made the best of his knowledge and tried desperately to dodge, but he was still rubbed by Yagami Kangdo's sword, and his entire chest and abdomen were almost ripped open. General Akainu. The nearby Vice Admiral couldn't help shouting in horror. If Akainu is in its prime, with Garp, Zephyr and the three of them posing, it would be really able to stop Yagami Kangdo, but he was hammered by Whitebeard before, and later ate Yagami Kangdo. The punch was completely seriously injured, and even if Cap Zephyr tried his best to stop Yagami Kangdo, he could no longer form a sufficient alliance. Whoosh, whoosh. Garp and Zephyr gritted their teeth and continued to charge. But Yagami Kangdo faced the two of them, but he had no intention of backing down. Murasama in his hand swung a letter horizontally, and a terrifying slash slammed toward the entire front. Garp and Zephyr all threw their fists, and the armed arrogance and the sword glow crazily collided, but in the end they couldn't resist. They were repelled by Yagami Kangdo with a sword. Another step down. Yagami Aoto bullied Akainu again. Akainu was already seriously injured, and this time it was impossible to avoid it. Kangdo's sword was forced to use his armament color to the limit and wave his fist to resist. Yagami Kangdo's sword edge flashed. The armed color on the blade was domineering, directly smashing Akainu's armed color, and the sharp sword light swept across his arm. This time it was not lava splashing, but blood spurting. An arm rose into the sky. Ah ah ah. Akainu broke his arm and screamed. The whole person retreated sharply. His right hand covered the part where his arm was cut off, where the lava surged and stopped the outflow of blood. After cutting off Akainu's arm with one move, Yagami Kangdo ushered in the joint attack of Garp and Zephyr, still slashing out with his sword, and repulsing the two in a head-to-head way. Whether it's Garp or Zephyr, everyone on this battlefield can only watch helplessly at this moment. The 8 gods can't help it. The blocking gods and demons swept the entire battlefield, and there was blood when a sword fell. Flowers splash. Another sword. A scary scar appeared on Akainu's chest and abdomen. Another sword. Akainu's right arm also soared into the sky. Another sword. A head full of disbelief and unwillingness flew into the sky. Until the moment of death, Akainu couldn't accept the fact that he would die here, in the Navy headquarters. He has to become a naval marshal, eradicate all pirates, and the era of the great pirates, destroy Yagami Kangdo, and wash away the humiliation he once had, but all of this has become at this moment, far away. And can no longer be seen. Unwilling. His heart was filled with deep unwillingness. The head fell on the ice in the distance, rolled twice, and still couldn't rest his eyes. After Admiral Warring States, Akainu, one of the 3 generals with the highest combat power of the Navy headquarters, Sakazuki, died in battle. Philo reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend, and share. Chapter 422, Cut off Zephyr's arm. Aokiji Kayabu and others were already dull on their faces. The movements of Garp and Zephyr were also completely stopped, and at this moment, countless navies couldn't help but feel a trace of despair in their hearts. Who can stop Yagami Kangdo? It's too strong, outrageous, almost unbelievable. Even if Garp took action, he still can't stop Yagami Kangdo from rampaging the battlefield and killing wantonly. Could it be that today, the Navy really wants to destroy by Yagami Soto? He stands here in front of Akainu's corpse. At this moment, Yagami Kangdo, who is wearing a black cloak, can be said to be like a god of death. Wherever his eyes can see, no one is not afraid, no one is afraid. Those people who watched this scene through the broadcast, their hearts are even more blank. The Admiral of the Navy is dead, and the Admiral of the Navy is also dead. You must know that those who appear are not the real main force of the Yagami Kangdu pirates. If the Yagami Kangdu pirates were to be dispatched in full, even the Navy headquarters, which had been on full alert before, would be able to withstand it. I'm afraid not. The forces that are truly superior to the Navy are truly qualified to challenge the world government, and are qualified to challenge the world government. The power of the world government to declare war. Yagami Sudo slowly took back Murasama, and he turned to look at the battlefield. With more than half of his stamina remaining, killing Sengoku and Akainu was easier than he thought. Even after killing Sengoku and beheading Akainu, Yagami Kangdu still did not receive the reward from defeating the Navy. In that case, Yagami Kangdu's eyes flickered and muttered, and his eyes finally fell on him. When Kizaru noticed Yagami Kangdu's gaze, he shivered instantly, and had a vague feeling in his heart. Could it be that Yagami Kangdu is going to trouble him again? It's too much. You have already killed Akainu and the Warring States period. Yagami Kangdu glanced at Kizaru, but he withdrew his gaze and finally looked at Zephyr not far away. Kizaru hasn't been hurt much now, and coupled with the particularity of the glittering fruit, it should be the most difficult to kill other than Garp, and it takes too much physical strength to kill. In this case, it is better to destroy Zephyr first. Although Zephyr left the Navy in the later period, he and the pirates have a mentality and hatred that is almost like a tiger, especially after defecting to the Navy. His behavior is even better than Akainu. Persons who may be recruited. Not good. Garp noticed the change in Yagami Kangdu's eyes, and his face changed suddenly, and said, Zephyr, be careful. But before he could finish his words, Yagami Kangdu made a bold move. With a sword from a distance, he slashed at Zephyr head-on. Sigh. This sword directly cut the space between Yagami Kangdu and Zephyr in half. The blade cut through the void, spanned a distance of hundreds of meters, and slashed towards Zephyr's head. Zephyr's face changed drastically. It was too late to dodge, and he shouted loudly, arousing the domineering of his armed color to the limit, and waved his wrist to block it. At the same time, his body also stepped back, trying to unload while resisting. The sword of the Eight Gods Kangdu is still unparalleled. Even if part of the power is spent on cutting the space, it still cuts through Zephyr's armed color. He chopped off Zephyr's wrist, but he also chopped into it instantly, slicing on top of the bone, making a sour sound. Chapter 423, The World Government Comes. Garp roared angrily, and threw his fists at Yagami Kangdu. But the Eight Gods Kangdu ignored his obstruction, and after taking a step forward, he directly crossed the cut-off space and came to Zephyr. The blade in his hand is sent forward. Zephyr also knew that he was facing a life-and-death crisis, so he shouted violently, forcing his strength to the limit, vaguely seeming to restore the strength of the peak state of the year. With the dark armed color domineering on his fist, he hit the tip of the sword. Yagami Kangdu's Murasama sword collided directly with Zephyr's fist. This collision did not make a sound of gold and iron, but instead gave a snort, and saw that the sword tip of Yashin Kangdu had already pierced through Zephyr's armed color. With force, the day tiger stimulated, condensed on the blade, and sent it forward fiercely. Chang! This sword pierced through Zephyr's fist abruptly, pierced through his arm, and the blade came out from behind his shoulder. The whole process only took 2 seconds. Kukai finally rushed over. Yagami Kangdu flicked his wrist, and the blade directly cut through Zephyr's arm, piercing through it, and Zephyr staggered back, his face pale. Originally, because of his broken arm, his combat effectiveness had dropped too much. At this time, his arm was almost broken, and with his old age, he no longer had much combat effectiveness. The power displayed by Yagami Kangdu gives everyone the same feeling. That is, despair. Desperately powerful, Yagami Kangdu had a sword, and after blocking his fist, he continued to rush towards Zephyr. Once he decides who he wants to attack, there can be no mercy. If you want to do it, you will kill it completely. Carp was powerless to stop it, in no time. Under Emu's gaze, the sword of the 8 gods Kangdu pierced through Zeph's chest. Is there anyone else who can stop him? There is a major general from the Navy headquarters. The blade in his hand fell to the ground, and the whole person knelt down involuntarily. When faced with a despairing existence, when there is no sense of the dawn of victory, that despair, even a person with a firm mind, will lose the will to fight. The faces of Aokiji and Kyabu were also ugly. At this time, no one knows what to do. It can be said that the naval headquarters can already be declared collapsed in terms of combat power and command power. But almost when Yagami Kangdu beheaded Zfa and made countless navies feel despair, a black shadow appeared silently, sending a black vortex at Yagami Kangdu's shadow. Black prison, ban extermination. Of the world government has finally arrived at the naval headquarters. This black vortex is wrapped in a heart-pounding aura, and the terrifying gravitational force contained in it seems to be able to strangle everything, obliterate. But color has reached its peak, and the 8th god Kangdu, who has the ability to predict the future, has long predicted the arrival of the black prison. He turned around, and the blade in his hand slashed fiercely. Wrapped in a stern blade, it cut across the black vortex. The black vortex was instantly frozen there, the top and bottom were divided into 2, and finally turned into wisps of scattered power, dissipating in the void. It's finally here. Philo reminds you. 3 things to read, collect, recommend and share. Chapter 424. The Strength of the 5 Old Stars. Yagami Kangdu held Murasama and looked at the black prison that appeared, but his face did not show any confusion, but said coldly, "Only you think you can stop me." However, just as his voice had just finished speaking, his expression changed slightly, the whole person flickered, and abruptly moved tens of meters to one side. And at the same time, a thick thunder, like a water column, poured down from the sky and slashed at the position where Yagami Kangdu stood before. Avoiding the thunder's attack, Yagami Soto looked up at the sky. There, with an inexplicable ability, a figure was floating in the air. He was wearing black clothes, and his face was not unfamiliar at all. The highest power core of the world government. One of the 5 old stars. Master 5 old stars. Some lieutenant generals in the Navy raised their heads and saw the figures in the sky, with a hint of surprise on their faces. Few people thought that the 5 old stars would come over in person. Kizaru and the others took a deep breath at this moment. I can't sit still anymore. Yagami Kangdu looked up at the sky and opened his mouth lightly. 5 old stars are fighting powers, which Yagami Kangdu had confirmed long ago when he invaded the Holy Land Marijoa. And what he perceives is that among the 5 old stars, there should be at least 2 people, with combat power, thick and huge breath, at least the level of naval admirals. Fact. If I am, who exists in the shadows of the Draconians, is defined as a king. Lao Xing is equivalent to a civilian and military general under his command, and there is naturally a distinction between being good at governance and good at fighting. I didn't get rid of you earlier, I waited for a while. Careless, let you be a pirate, and you have come to this state. Degree. Wu Laoxing stared at Yagami Kangdu with a gloomy expression. But the Navy headquarters was built to maintain peace and justice in the world. How could you just destroy it so easily? As the voice fell, he raised his hand at Yagami Kangdu and launched an attack brazenly. Who is that? It seems to be the highest authority of the world government. 5 old stars. Watching this scene from a distance through the broadcast, people from all over the world once again made waves in their hearts at this moment. I thought that the Navy was about to collapse, but the support of the world government has arrived, and one of them is still standing at the top of the world, holding the highest power of the 5 old stars. In fact, for the whole world, the 5 old stars are extremely mysterious existences. The world only knows that they are the highest power core of the world government and the highest position of the Tianlong people, but what these 5 people represent, and what their specific identities are all a mystery. Quote. Seeing the appearance of the 5 old stars, Garp slowly lowered his fist. To the 5 old stars, or to the Tianlong people, Garp has never been very cold, and what he insists on is only the justice of the Navy, not the power of the Tianlong people. Garp's fighting spirit gradually faded, and at the moment when Wu Laoxing shot, he did not choose to flank Yagami Kingdu back and forth. But of the 5 old stars alone still amazes the world. Tian Lei. I saw Wu Laoxing snort coldly, and waved his hand in the direction of Iori Kangdu, and the cloud-covered sky was intertwined with countless thunder arcs, which bombarded Iori Kangdu. Chapter 425, The Fruit of Natural Disaster. Seeing this scene, Yashin Kangdu narrowed his eyes slightly, but without any intention of giving in, he directly clenched his fist with his left hand and punched it towards the sky. Boom! The thunder that was as thick as a bucket, before it fell, collided with the day tiger in the void, with a burst of explosions, and was finally broken up abruptly. The thunder fruit is under the command of Yagami Kangdu, but in this world, not only the thunder fruit can control the thunder, like the soul and soul fruit, it can also control the thunder cloud in the way of Hornies, and exert the power of thunder. Among the animal-type phantom beasts, there are also special forms that control thunder. However, before everyone could recover from the shock of the thunder released by Wu Laoxing, which was shattered by Iori Kangdu, they saw Wu Laoxing rush towards Iori Kangdu. At the same time, a strange and surging force swayed away from him. Earth fire. People rushed over, the ground that had long been shattered by the Navy headquarters exploded, and the magma rose into the sky along with the flames, sweeping towards the 8 gods Kangdu. Kangdu, the 8th god of fire magma, twitched his eyebrows slightly, and vaguely thought of something, but he was not confused at all. Split in the center. The roar of the earth. Hurricane roar. Wu Laoxing's hands were one left and one right, and suddenly closed towards the center. With the wave of his hands, countless mudslides rolled wildly, wrapped in frost, while on the other side was a violent hurricane, wrapped in dust and ice that filled the sky, and attacked Iori Kangdu. Thunder and fire. A short period of time, the 5 old stars have already revealed 4 abilities, which are no longer something that the devil fruit of the nature department can do, nor can the devil fruit of any phantom beast species do it. Only one devil fruit can possess this power. The superhuman natural disaster fruit. According to rumors, the ability to control all natural disasters is known as the strongest and one of the most invincible devil fruit abilities, ranking even above the thunder. Thunder, fire, and wind. Can't be wrong, this is the fruit of natural disasters. Marco and the others from the Whitebeard Pirates looked at this scene, and their expressions were all moved. Marco took a deep breath and spoke slowly. This devil fruit has not appeared in the sea for a long time, so that many people have forgotten the horror of the natural disaster fruit. But Marco still remembers that when he was very young, the natural disaster fruit person used this ability to destroy countless islands, and even defeated that generation of naval marshals. The power of this devil fruit is that it is almost able to ignore the crowd tactics. Even in the face of 2 or 3 people with similar strength to himself, he can forcefully suppress his opponent by unleashing various disasters continuously. The 8 gods Kangdu also confirmed this at the moment. He snorted lightly, and stepped forward, directly avoiding the swept mudslides and hurricanes, and rushed towards the 5 old stars. Wu Laoxing's expression did not change. He pulled out a sword, and the sword slashed towards Yashin Kangdu. Filu reminds you. 3 things to read, collect, recommend, and share. 420th chapters. Fear it. Tremble. This sword was split, and a forest of white cold air appeared in the void. Wherever it passed, it was as if the extreme cold was coming, and the ground and air were all condensed into ice. The frozen fruit of the green pheasant is purely the ability to manipulate ice, while the natural disaster fruit grasps the disaster caused by extreme cold, the cold disaster. As a frozen fruit ability, the green pheasant can ignore the cold disaster, but other beings, in the face of one of the most terrifying disasters in this world, must do their best to resist. Chang. The blade in Yagami Kangdu's hand wrapped around the day tiger and swung it out, dispersing the cold blast. However, after the cold air dissipated, it did not disappear. Instead, it spread in all directions. In an instant, the temperature in the area of hundreds of meters in a radius dropped by dozens of degrees. Under this extreme cold, ordinary people almost instantly, it will be frozen into ice sculptures. But what shocked Wu Laoxing was that Yashin Kangdu was covered by this extreme cold, although the black cloak and the mouth and nose were covered with a layer of frost, but the speed of the whole person was not affected in the slightest. The 8 gods Kangdu stepped forward and punched the 5 old stars. Boom! The 5 old stars stimulated the domineering aura of their armament, and at the same time they lifted their feet, causing the whole earth to shake, setting off a large swath of soil to block the front, which was able to block Yashin Kangdu's blow. But even so, he still staggered back. In front of today's Yagami Kangdu, no matter whether it is natural disasters or any fancy abilities, they can't stop his tough frontal blow. This guy, the body is really comparable to Kai. Wu Laoxing was shocked by the punch of Yagami Kangdu and became ugly. Under the cover of his cold disaster, even a strong man like Garp could not be completely unaffected unless he was fully attached to his armed arrogance. And the 8 gods Kangdu in front of him didn't use his armament at all, he just ignored the extreme cold with his body alone. This body has obviously reached the level of non-human beings. Is that all there is to it? 8 gods Kangdu smashed Wu Laoxing back with a punch, looked at him with a dull expression, and said, "Then next, it's my turn." The moment the voice fell, Yagami Kangdu held the sword in both hands and slammed it into the ground. Om! The blade pierced the earth, and the shock wave instantly poured into the earth, spreading in all directions, surging frantically. For a while, it was as if the ability of the fluttering fruit was stimulated, and countless pieces of ice and rubble floated to the sky in the cracking cracks. Wu Laoxing's complexion changed slightly, and he also noticed that a force enveloped his body. The whole earth shook violently, colliding with the shock wave of Yagami Kangdu. Boom! The Navy headquarters is like a boiling oil pan, under the horrified gaze of countless people, with the Yagami Kangdu and the 5 old stars as the center, blasting in all directions. Be fearful! 8 gods Kangdu held the village rein in his hand, and slanted it towards the 5 old stars. The 8th-door Dunjia combined with the power of the soul, and soul suddenly bloomed and burst towards the 5 old stars. In Wu Laoxing's heart was awakened by this power, and the fear was suddenly enlarged infinitely. His eyes widened, his pupils contracted violently, his chest heaved up and down, his breathing was almost stagnant, as if he had met a ghost in the middle of the night. Chapter 427, Sweeping Invincible, Only I 8 Gods. The fear in his heart was aroused to the limit, and the 5 old stars roared, desperately releasing the power of the natural disaster fruit. For a time, thunder, earth, fire, hurricanes and earthquakes erupted all around him, sweeping towards the surroundings, destroying everything in the vicinity. But at this moment, Yagami Kangdu withdrew the power of the soul fruit. The whole person suddenly flickered, came to the air, and pressed the palm of his left hand down. Day Tiger. Under the press of Yagami Kangdu, a terrifying shock wave suddenly appeared in the void, bombarding the 5 old stars head-on. The thunder and earth fire released by Wu Laoxing couldn't penetrate the Day Tiger when it was bombarded, and after a flip, it hit him back. Oops! Laoxing recovered from his fear and cried out in his heart, but he could only release the power of natural disasters, and could not control them. Facing all kinds of disasters attacking from all directions, he could only condense armed domineering to resist. Boom! The thunder, the fire, the wind and the cold, all exploded in an instant. Of various elements caused the 5 old stars in the center to let out a scream. The black suit was instantly shattered, and there were also many completely different wounds such as burns and frostbite on the body. You are indeed very strong, and the ability of the natural disaster fruit is indeed very strong. But its weakness is that it is too strong, so strong that you cannot control it freely. Yagami Kangdu waved his hand away, and at the same time that the Day Tiger opened his mouth indifferently, the blade in his hand slashed towards Wu Laoxing's head. In all nations. In addition to cultivating every day, what else does Yagami Kingdu do? It's not like Robin and Leiju do shy things all the time. When he has nothing to do, he goes to the devil fruit illustrations to check the strongest fruits. It is expected that the natural disaster fruit is the one that Iori Kingdu has a deep impression on. This fruit can be said to be the power enough to decide a war. If a few natural disasters are released casually, the enemy will be almost completely wiped out. And in a separate battle, it is also outrageously powerful. Perhaps a simple earthquake is not as good as a shocking fruit, and a simple skyfire is not as good as a rock fruit, but it is strong in that it can release any kind of disaster. 2 kinds of even the 3 kinds of disasters are intertwined, and the power is extremely terrifying. But it is precisely because the power of natural disasters released by the natural disaster fruit is too strong, so it also has a disadvantage, which Iori Kingdu is also very clear about, that is, it is difficult to control. That cannot be freely retracted and released or no longer controlled by the capable person himself, which is equivalent to completely turning into a real natural disaster. Lord 5 Old Stars. How is it possible? Even the ability of the natural disaster fruit. Countless navies of the Navy headquarters all had shock expressions on their faces at this moment. The ability of the 5 Old Stars to show the fruits of the open-air disaster made their hearts tremble. It's a little too scary. Even the ability of the natural disaster fruit can't fight against Yagami Kingdu. Cough. Damn. In Wu Laoxing's eyes, he didn't expect that he possessed the ability of natural disaster fruit, and it was only a few rounds to fight against Yashin Kingdu, and he was injured and fell into a critical situation. If it wasn't for his body, which was also researched by Vegapunk, nourished by the special life culture fluid, and possessed a strong vitality, he would have been seriously injured just now. Phailu reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend, and share. Chapter 428. Suppress the 5 Old Stars with only one hand. Black Prison. Seeing that the 5 Old Stars were in crisis, the Black Prison not far away made a move without hesitation, and a gravitational force slammed into the Day Tiger on the blade of the Yagami Kingdu. The 2 forces collided in the void. His gravitational force is obviously not as good as that of Yagami Kingdu's current Day Tiger. Even if he goes all out, it can only make Yagami Kingdu's blade deviate a little from the arc. Chang. Wu Laoxing held the sword in both hands and blocked it with one sword. With the help of Yagami Kingdu's blade's deviation, he finally forcibly avoided the sword and rolled on the ground. Come on together. Seeing that the Black Prison had already made a move, Yagami Kingdu snorted coldly, holding Murasama in his right hand, and condensing the Day Tiger in his left hand, and directly attacked the 2 of them with such ferocity. Black Prison assists Wu Laoxing, interferes with Yashin Kingdu's movements with the ability of gravitational fruit, involves part of Yashin Kingdu's energy, and makes Wu Laoxing's natural disaster ability easier to play. But as time passed, what shocked both of them was that even if they worked together to deal with Yashin Kingdu, they were still suppressed by Yashin Kingdu alone. The one released by Wu Laoxing, the natural disaster, in front of Yashin Kingdu, was either smashed by a punch, or cleaved by a sword. He did not have the ability to suppress Yashin Kingdu at all. As for the gravitational fruit of the Black Prison, the remote release can indeed contain part of the power of Yagami Kingdu, but the problem is that even if part of Yagami Kingdu's power is contained, it is still a fierce mess. Boom. I saw Iori Kingdu smashed out a punch, shattering the gravitational force released by the Black Prison, and another punch from the backhand, knocking out the wind disaster and fire of the 5 Old Stars, and knocking it back again and again. With 1 enemy and 2, the 5 Old Stars who fought were defeated. Die. In the fierce battle of the 8 gods, a cold light flashed in the eyes, and suddenly the Black Prison was blasted back with a move, and then the whole person stepped out, and the Day Tiger smashed the space directly in front. His figure suddenly turned into 4, enclosing Wu Laoxing in the center, 4 village rain swords, wrapped around the Day Tiger, and slashed down at Wu Laoxing. Wu Laoxing's face changed drastically, and he immediately roared, released 4 natural disasters in a row, swept in all directions, and confronted the four figures of Yagami Kangdu. But, under the shock wave of the 8 gods Kangdu, the 4 natural disasters were forcibly cut open one after another, and the sword edge continued to sweep towards the 5 old stars. Wu Laoxing tried his best to twist his body to dodge, but he was still hit by the blade of the sword. In an instant, blood splattered everywhere, and a terrifying bloodstain appeared between his chest and abdomen, and he was almost cut open. The 8 gods Kangdu defeated the Black Prison, severely damaged the 5 old stars, and once again raised his momentum to the peak, making countless people lose their voices. Still invincible, too strong. Among the pirates of the Whitebeard Pirates, there was a captain who looked at Yagami Soto's almost invincible posture and couldn't help but murmured. At this moment, the spirit displayed by Yagami Kangdu is even higher than that of the Whitebeard of the Year. King of the Navy Headquarters, beheaded the Admiral and the Admiral of the Navy, and severely damaged the 5 old stars, one of the most powerful rulers of the world government. What a fierce aura! Prepare to withdraw. Marco was also looking at Yagami Kangdu, but while the waves in his heart were surging, he took a deep breath, and there was a trace of calm in his eyes. Chapter 429, Representing the World. You are not qualified. Help Yagami Kangdu to stop the Admiral, and let Yagami Kangdu have the opportunity to kill Akainu and Sengoku. They no longer owe Yagami Kangdu any favors. This is the headquarters of the Navy, which is very close to the world government, and reinforcements from the world government will arrive at any time. No matter how strong Yagami Kangdu is, he is only one person after all, and his physical strength cannot be unlimited. The reinforcements from the world government arrive, Yagami Kangdu may be able to leave easily, but they will not be able to leave at that time, so now is. It's time to withdraw. It's time to withdraw. Diamond Yoja also spoke in a low voice. In fact, everyone's mood is not high right now, no matter how miserable the Navy headquarters is, and no matter how the world government collapses, they will never be able to get back their father's white beard. Marco and others had already planned to retreat, and in the process of continuing the battle, they began to move to the periphery of the naval headquarters, and responded by fighting and retreating. Marco retreated, there was a chain reaction on Yagami Kangdu's side. Whoosh! Just as he was about to take advantage of the situation to pursue and see if he could kill one of the 5 old stars here, a dazzling sword chi burst into the air and attacked Kangdu, the 8 gods. Sword energy is not huge, but it is bright and dazzling, and it contains the power to cut through everything. This is Peach Rabbit's slash. It's a pity. When the 8 gods Kangdu swung his sword to resist, Wu Laoxing had already retreated a few dozen meters away in embarrassment. At this moment, Iori Kangdu was suspended in midair, and the light from the corner of his eyes had already sensed the retreat of Marco and the others. Marco and the others are just the remnants of the White Hu pirates, not his, and it is impossible to help them here all the time. Be able to hit the Navy so badly, to put it bluntly, it is also the Whitebeard pirates, and with the assistance of Hurricane Incarnation, now that Marco and others are going to withdraw, then this battle obviously has no meaning to continue. Yagami Kangdu he didn't make another move, but he didn't take it back either. Instead, he retracted the blade, and just hovered in the sky, looking down at the Navy headquarters indifferently. After Taotu saved Wu Laoxing with one sword, he didn't make a move without authorization, but took a deep breath, staring at Yashin Kangdu in front of Hengjan, who was extremely alert. No one else made a move without authorization. The strength of Yagami Kangdu put too much pressure on everyone present. Although they all knew that Yagami Kangdu's physical strength should have been consumed a lot, no one dared to attack rashly. In other words, even if everyone joins forces to keep Yagami Kangdu, I am afraid that at least 1 or 2 people will be killed under Yagami Kangdu's counterattack, and no one wants to be the one who died. It's a pity I couldn't kill you here. Yagami Kangdu glanced at the Navy headquarters, but did not pay any attention to the generals such as Aokiji and Kayabu who had quietly withdrawn, and finally landed on Wu Laoxing. Wu Laoxing's face was extremely gloomy, although the wound between his chest and abdomen was forcibly closed by his life return, peristaltic muscles, but his serious injury was impossible to erase. Even if it wasn't for Tautu's timely support just now, even if he didn't die on the spot, he would have been beaten to death by Yagami Kangdu. Pirates, it is impossible to be an enemy of the government. Wu Laoxing finally spoke coldly and said, if you want to resist this world and become an enemy of the world, no one can do it, and your so-called 10,000 kingdoms will surely usher in destruction. Eight-God Kangdu looked calm, overlooking the 5 old stars, and said, it sounds good to be an enemy of the world, but unfortunately, you Tianlong people, if you want to represent the whole world, it seems to be a little short. Filu reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend, and share. Chapter 430, The War is Over. Today is not a decisive battle, you should be glad. The momentum on Yagami Kangdu slowly subsided. At the same time, the incarnation of the hurricane gradually shrank, turning into a small tornado, which came to the shoulders of the 8 gods Kangdu, and the incarnation also controlled the rock giant to collapse and fall back to the earth, and finally turned into the form of Anilu. Under the power of Yagami Kangdu, he flew into the sky and stood behind Yagami Kangdu without saying a word. Nami, who was on top of the rock giant, was lifted up by a stone platform and flew into the air, landing on the other side of Yagami Kanto. During the whole process, some people in the navy tightened their weapons, but no one dared to take action. The consequences of this top war were already too serious, to the extent that they were almost unbearable. If it continues, no one knows how to take this responsibility. In the last days, live well. Yagami Kangdu pressed his hand in the void, a vortex appeared in the space in front of him, and he opened a space portal. Standing in front of the space gate, Yagami Kangdu turned his head and swept towards the Navy headquarters, as well as Wu Laoxing and others, and said, the next time we meet, this world will no longer belong to you. The dull voice swayed in the Navy headquarters. Yagami Kangdu took a step forward, and the spatial vortex suddenly expanded, enveloping everyone in it. Om! The vortex rippled, then turned into ripples and slowly dissipated, and the figures of Yagami Kangdu and others had already disappeared. Only ruins are left, no more. The naval headquarters of any building. Of Wu Laoxing, Kizaru and others. In the 22nd year of the Great Pirate Era, the Navy executed a public execution against the captain of the 22nd Division of the Whitebeard Pirates at Marineford in the headquarters. During the execution, the Whitebeard Sea attacked, and finally rescued the leader of the 2nd Division, Fire Fist Ace, and one of the 3 legendary pirates, Whitebeard, died in the battle. The war did not end with the fall of Whitebeard. With the arrival of the ruler of all nations, Yagami Kangdu, openly declared war on the world government. The war broke out again, and the naval headquarters ushered in an unprecedented defeat. Admiral Akainu of the Navy headquarters, died in battle. Marshal of the Navy headquarters, Sengoku, died in battle. In this battle, the Navy suffered an unprecedented huge loss. Marineford was completely destroyed, was beaten to pieces, and became an island that is no longer suitable for human habitation. The highest power core of the world government appeared at a critical moment, but still could not be saved. In the end, the 8 gods Kangdu and his 2 mysterious fighting forces under his command left calmly. This battle. It was later called the War on the Top. And this battle is also a 2.5-year-long huge battle between the nations and the world government to compete for this world. The first song. It's over. The war. In the Chambord archipelago, nearly half a minute passed until the figure of Yagami Kangdu disappeared, and countless people who were immersed in it gradually woke up like a dream. The war is over. Did the Whitebeard pirates win? No, although Ace came out, Whitebeard died in battle. This is not a victory for the pirates. Did the Navy win? No, although Whitebeard, one of the 3 legendary pirates, was killed. The death of the Admiral, and the complete sinking of the Navy headquarters is far from being linked to the word victory. Chapter 431. This world is about to change. This battle was initiated by the Navy, and the Whitebeard pirates will undertake the next war. But neither side is victorious. In this war, there is only one person, or one force, that has won a great victory, that is, the nations. In this battle, despite the involvement of the Whitebeard pirates, Yagami Kingdu wiped out the two forces of the navy. Great fighting power, but why did the Yagami Kingdu pirates ever come to the scene? This world is about to change. The nations and the government, who can finally win? Many people looked at the sky and couldn't help but muttered blankly. Regarding the future of this world, they, the commoners, could only be at a loss. The admiral and the admiral are dead. Can anyone stop Yagami Kanto and Wangguo? Someone murmured. Maybe in the future, Tianlong people will no longer be world nobles. Someone next to him shook his head and said, no, the government won't lose so easily. They have ruled this world for 800 years. The main force of the 8 gods Kingdu pirates is not there, but the other combat powers under the world government have not been reached, and no one knows what kind of power they have. After many people came back to their senses, they couldn't help but whisper. Where will this world go? Someone looked up at the sky and sighed. These civilians, there is no way for them to make any changes before this wave that is about to change the entire world. They can only try their best to protect themselves. Anyone, when faced with the change of politicians who rule the world, is confused and at a loss. Chambord Islands. Somewhere along the coast, the space swirled. Yagami Kingdu's Day Tiger space ability is still unable to cross too far distance. From the naval headquarters to the Chambord Islands, it is almost the limit of what he can do at present. When the space vortex dissipated, 3 figures emerged from it, Yagami Kanto standing in front, the expressionless avatar on the left and the dizzy Nami on the right. Because of the span of space, she couldn't bear it for a while. She only felt that the world was spinning. It was difficult to maintain her figure, and she fell to the side. Yagami Kingdu's probing hands supported her. At this moment, Nami could only hold Iori Soto's arm, barely maintaining her figure, and it took about half a minute before she finally recovered from the severe dizziness. Is this the Chambord Islands? She looked at the surrounding environment, and there was a trace of confusion in her eyes. Yes. Iori Kingdu nodded and said, the Navy and the government can't control this place for the time being. Nami recalled the scenes she witnessed in the war on the top, and couldn't help taking a deep breath. It was a bit unimaginable that the ruler of all nations, the one who challenged this world, was standing beside him now. Where are you going? Looking for your companion. Yagami Kanto asked casually at Nami. Nami didn't know what to do for a while, and when she heard Yagami Kanto's words, she nodded slowly with some hesitation. Then go, they are also on this island, with Raleigh the Hades. 8-God Kingdu smiled lightly and said, if you want to take an adventure, just go and complete your adventure. When you don't want to make waves anymore, come to Wangguo to take care of the finances for me. After the voice fell, Yagami Kingdu stepped into the distance, his back gradually blurred, like water ripples, and disappeared. Philo reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend, and share. Chapter 432, The Advent of the New World. At this point, it can be said that the wheel of history has been rolling over, and the surging river of the times is flowing downstream. There is no need to worry, and no need to worry anymore. After a few hours, Yagami Kanto returned to Sky Island Pika, took a bath under Nina's service, changed into a clean bathrobe, and slept on the soft bed made by Shimayan. This sleep lasted until noon the next day, when Yagami Kingdu woke up leisurely, opened his eyes, walked off the bed, came to the window, and stretched. It's already noon. Walking out of the palace and into the outer hall, Yagami Kingdu looked at Nina, who was sitting on the sofa reading a book, and said, what's going on with the world government? We are trying to reduce losses as much as possible, but this war is open, and we have specially sent surveillance seagulls to record from the sky. They can't cover up much. Nina put down the book, looked at Kingdu, the 8 gods who came over, and said, Wangguo's side, and the country has already sorted out almost, and the other forces under the beasts have not resisted much. As expected. Yagami Kanto nodded. He declared war on the world government at the naval headquarters, and killed the admiral and the admiral of the navy. Even the stupidest person knew that the situation in this world was gone forever. The past, the sea, the world government and the navy were at the top, the 4 emperors were ranked below the navy, and the Chihuahai was second, forming a balanced situation. Now, the balance has not been broken, but a new form. Wanguo has become the only huge force that can confront the world government across the bank. In front of the 2 major forces of Wanguo and the world government, all other forces are enough to see, especially in the 4 emperors, there is only one red-haired incense left. In the case of KX, the red-haired Shanks never appeared on the battlefield of the Top War from the beginning to the end, and after the Top War, there was no movement, and it seemed that he did not intend to draw a few more strokes in this situation. With what you have done in the Navy headquarters, it will take less than half a month to completely rectify the territory under the command of the beasts. Nina whispered to Yagami Kangdu, what to do with the red-haired and white-bearded territory. Whitebeard is history. Yagami Kangdu came to the sofa and sat down, took a cup of tea and took a sip, and said, Marco is a smart person, I don't think they have any plans to be competitive anymore. As for the red hair, wait until they take over the Whitebeard's territory, and then see what their plans are. In fact. Indeed, as Iori Kangta and Nina had foreseen, after Iori Kangta declared war on the world government with the power of all nations, there were many requests for attachment. Conquering the new world seems to be a matter of course, and the resistance is greatly reduced. As for the forces that try to join Wanguo's command, Yagami Kangdu's characterization is also very simple. As before, the pirates who burn, kill and loot are not required, just normal forces. Wanguo has now become a world government, composed of a large number of countries. What use are these pirates who burn, kill and loot? For the subsequent governance of Wanguo, Yagami Kangdu did not worry about it. These, you don't need to think and discuss at all, you have conquered the world and mastered the power, and there will naturally be someone attached to you to govern the world for you. Chapter 433, High-Matched Puppet. The real rulers of the world government are the Tianlong people, and the power of the Tianlong people is now unstable, and many countries have begun to shirk the various rules of the world government, such as paying the heavenly gold. This is just one aspect. After briefly discussing with Nina the future development and expansion direction of Wanguo, Yagami Kangdu left the palace and flew upwards continuously until he reached the sky, overlooking the clouds below. Because I often come to this height to practice, coupled with the strength of the body, even at this height, there is basically no pressure on Yagami Kangdu. After returning to Pika, Yagami Kangdu took a permanent pointer, and directly used the ability of the divine power space to continuously cross the space in the direction pointed by the pointer. After a while, he arrived in Wano country. Today's Wano country has been completely controlled by Wanguo. Fujitora is sitting here, and the rest of the captains have almost taken over the other islands. However, to accept, to eliminate all the forces belonging to Kaido, and then put their own people there to control each island, but it will take some time. These, Yagami Kangdu didn't pay much attention either. Now that the general trend of the world has become a reality, the only threat left is the world government, and all other forces cannot reach it, including the red-haired pirates. Even if Yagami Aoto is not there, and all the incarnations are taken away, just relying on the fighting strength of Fujitora, Shiryu of the Rain, etc. There is no fear of the red-haired pirates at all. Yagami Soto went straight to the forbidden area of the Palace of Peace. What's the matter, can anyone bear Jack's physique? Walked in, Gilles was already outside the palace, and he had been staying in the forbidden area. Besides guarding the detained Drought Jack and others, he also tried to use surgery to transform his combat power. The drought isn't enough, but the other departments are almost there. Gales said to Iori Kangdu, the soul fruit of Iori Kangdu is actually a powerful ability to hone the will, and many of the reserve members have improved their will after experiencing the magic power of the soul fruit. A big chunk. Original strength may not be comparable to the pirates who offered a reward of 3 trillion, but after the operation, they can almost perfectly control the body of the existence with a reward of more than 300 million. Fighting power skyrocketed. Go ahead and try it. If it doesn't work, use my soul to incarnate. Because the high-end version of drought-like Kaido has been made into an incarnation puppet, Yagami Kingdu has no interest in Drought Jack. After all, he is not inferior to the combat power of the three disasters. In front of him, the three disasters were basically at the level of one move and 1 second. Understood. Gelds nodded and walked into the palace with Yagami Soto. After Kaido became the incarnation of the beasts of Yagami Kingdu, he was ordered by Yagami Kingta to stay here, and the order was forbidden to leave unless the enemy came in. Don't move. Front of the incarnation of the beasts, Yagami Kingta pulled out Murasama and let him continue to sit there, and then brewed a ray of day tiger on the sword's edge and slashed it on Kaido's shoulder. Sigh. The arc flashed, and Kaido's shoulder was instantly cut off with a piece of flesh. However, in the next instant, Kaido's shoulders were squirming rapidly, and soon a new tender flesh was regenerated, and it gradually became the same as before. Philo reminds you 3 things to read, collect, recommend, and share. Chapter 434, The Tranquility Before the Storm. After taking a piece of Kaido's flesh, Yagami Kingdu left Wano country. Gelds is a surgeon, and there is very little research on the level of cells. To study Kaido's body essence, naturally, it is to find Caesar more to be suitable. Soon, Yagami Kantu returned from Wano country again, came to the base of Cake Island, and sent Kaido's flesh and blood to Caesar's hands for him to study. Getting Kaido's flesh and blood, Caesar is naturally excited. Although his interest is more in the study of poisonous gas, he has long wanted to study Kaido's body in depth, but it is known as immortal body. Before the appearance of Yagami Kingdu, no one can do anything about Kaido. I want to see the results as soon as possible. Seeing that Caesar took the piece of flesh and blood with a beaker, Yagami Kingdu said to him plainly, Caesar is sometimes lazy and slippery. Caesar nodded again and said with a smile, Hey. Lulululu, don't worry, I am a genius scientist. Leave it to me. If at first had to work for Yagami Kanto just because he was under the control of Yagami Kanto, then now he has transformed into a willingness to work under Yagami Kanto. Even if he is in the laboratory, it is impossible for him not to understand what is happening in the outside world. Today, Wanguo has declared war on the world government. If Wanguo can really defeat the world government, then as a member of Wanguo's subordinate, then but he is one of the founders of the new world government. Even if he can't compare to those captains in terms of status, being the top officer of a different department and becoming the top scientist of the new empire is probably a casual thing. I have always wanted to. Beyond Vegapunk. It can also be realized. After handing Kaido's flesh and blood to Caesar, Yagami too left Cake Island. Time flies. Nearly 2 years have passed since the war on the top. In the first half year, the naval headquarters was rebuilt, and the headquarters was moved to the original first branch base, and a fortress that was better than Marineford was built. In addition, in order to fight against all nations, the world government has also started a world conscription to re-establish the highest combat power of the Navy. 1 year after the war on the top, the naval headquarters completed the reorganization of the combat power, and Aochi succeeded as the marshal of the naval headquarters. As for the 3 admirals under his command, they were Tautu, Kyabu and the Green Bull, who was specially promoted in the world conscription. It is worth mentioning that the T-Dolphin had hoped to be promoted to general together with Tautu, but in the process of recruiting in the world, he lost to the Green Bull in a duel. In this world, strength is always respected, the strong live and the weak die. Green Bull has shown the strength to be stronger than the T-Dolphin. Even if the T-Dolphin is old enough, the position of Naval Admiral still falls to the Green Bull's head. Of the reorganization of the naval headquarters, the friction between the nations, the Navy, and the world government continued, and the Revolutionary Army also took this opportunity to fight the autumn wind and make waves. 2 years. Although there has never been a real war that can be regarded as a battle, at most. The captains of the nations confronted the generals of the Navy headquarters, and they both evacuated, but the atmosphere that permeated the whole world did not appear in the slightest loose. Because whether it is the strong or the weak, it is clear that this situation will not last long, and that the confrontation between the nations and the world government will come to an end sooner or later. Chapter 435. A massive battle sweeping the entire world. A huge battle beyond the top war, sweeping the whole world. In 2 years. In addition to the world government's world conscription, the expansion of the nations is actually much larger. Strictly speaking, due to the reorganization of the naval headquarters in the first year, the world government and the entire naval headquarters are in a form of shrinking, and they do not intend to collide with Wangguo at all, and the expansion of Wangguo is only a defense. In the first half year, Wangguo took over the territory of the 100 Beast Pirates and the Whitebeard Pirates, and Marco and others finally chose to launch the stage of the sea, and they had no idea of being competitive. As for Fire Fist Ace, after finding the answer to life, he also chose to quit. On the one hand, he no longer wanted to pursue the status of One Piece. On the other hand, Luffy was still moving forward for his dream. I don't want to collide with Luffy. But he is not going to join Luffy, so giving way is the best way. As an older brother, watch his younger brother set sail and chase his dreams. In the second half year, Wangguo took over the territory of the Red Hair Pirates. The red-haired pirates also chose to quit. They were caught between the world government and the world government. The only choice they could make was to join any party, or to withdraw voluntarily. Because once the 10,000 kingdoms and the world government are going to start a decisive battle, no matter which side, it is impossible to see 4 emperors eyeing them, and it will definitely solve them first. Not having the strength of the world government, and not wanting to join any party, Shanks finally chose to disband the Red Hair Pirates and withdrew from the New World. That is, when the naval headquarters completes the reorganization of combat power, Wangguo completely completes the entire New World and incorporates all the territory of the New World under its command. In addition, the power of the nations has also expanded to the North Sea, like the West Sea adjacent to the New World. Of power because of Germa 6. With the strong backing of Wangguo, it almost conquered more than half of the Beihai. As for the West Sea, although there is no foundation, it is still after Wangguo completely conquered the New World. Primary expansion area. In the second year, Wangguo conquered nearly half of the territory of the West Sea, and friction with the world government and the navy basically occurred in the West Sea. Regarding the New World and the North Sea that have been completely conquered by the nations, the world government gave up its plan to attack the past in a short period of time, and only tried its best to prevent the expansion of the nations in the West Sea. Today's Wangguo has nearly 100 subordinate countries. Although it is still a lot less than the world government, there is no doubt that Wangguo has completely turned into a world government that is opposed to the world government. Another empire, worth mentioning. The past 2 years, Luffy and his gang, who have not been scattered, have not rushed into the New World recklessly. In the Battle of the Top Battle, all Luffy and his gang realized their own insignificance, and they knew very well that with such combat power going to the New World, the hope of survival was too small and too small. In the end, they all learned from Rayleigh under the suggestion of Rayleigh. Domineering, and separate experience. And this day, Luffy and the others finally completed their cultivation, said goodbye to the Hades Raleigh in the Chambord Islands, took the coated Wanli Sunshine, dived into the seabed, and headed for the New World. Philo reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend, and share. Chapter 436. The balance has been broken. But what puzzled Luffy and his gang was that they dived to the bottom of the sea 10,000 meters and found a passage to the New World, but they didn't find Fishman Island. Why didn't Fishman Island appear? Is it still in a deeper place? Nami stood on the edge of the deck, looking at the deeper seabed. A hint of confusion flashed in her eyes. According to her judgment, and what Kemi mentioned 2 years ago, it should be here, but now it is not. There is no trace of Fishman Island at all. Kemi said at the time was that as long as you come to this sea area, you will be able to see the Fishman Island, because in this deep sea, only the Fishman Island is luminous. There is no Fishman Island. Luffy was lying on the boat deck in a sullen mood. He wanted to go to the Fishman Island for an adventure, but now he couldn't find the Fishman Island. Of course, he was a little unhappy. Comparison, Sanji is more depressed. He still wants to appreciate the beautiful figures of the legendary mermaids, but now he is only facing the dark seabed. Walking out of the palace and into the outer hall, Yagami Kingdu looked at Nina, who was sitting on the sofa reading a book, and said, "What's going on with the world government? We are trying to reduce losses as much as possible, but this war is open, and we have specially sent surveillance seagulls to record from the sky. They can't cover up much." Nina put down the book, looked at Kingdu, the 8 gods who came over, and said, "Wanguo's side, and the country has already sorted out almost, and the other forces under the beasts have not resisted much." As expected. Yagami Kanto nodded. He declared war on the world government at the naval headquarters, and killed the admiral and the admiral of the navy. No matter how stupid people are, they know that the situation in this world will never go away. The past, the sea, the world government and the navy were at the top, the 4 emperors were ranked below the navy, and the Shichibukai was second, forming a balanced situation. And now, balance was not broken, but changed into new forms. Wanguo has become the only huge force that can confront the world government across the bank. In front of the 2 major forces, Wanguo and the world government, all other forces are not enough, especially in the 4 emperors. There is only one red-haired incense left. In the case of KX, the red-haired Shanks never appeared on the battlefield of the Top War from the beginning to the end, and after the Top War, there was no movement, and it seemed that he did not intend to draw a few more strokes in this situation. With what you have done in the Navy headquarters, it will take less than half a month to completely rectify the territory under the command of the beasts. Nina whispered to Yagami Kangdu, what to do with the red-haired and white-bearded territory. Whitebeard is history. Yagami Kangdu came to the sofa and sat down, took a cup of tea and took a sip, and said, Marco is a smart person. I don't think they have any plans to be competitive anymore. As for the red hair, wait until they take over the Whitebeard's territory, and then see what their plans are. In fact. Indeed, as Iori Kingta and Nina had foreseen, after Iori Kingta declared war on the world government with the power of all nations, there were many requests for attachment. Conquering the new world seems to be a matter of course, and the resistance is greatly reduced. Chapter 437, The Tranquility Before the Storm. Time flies. Nearly 2 years have passed since the war on the top. In the first half year, the naval headquarters was rebuilt, and the headquarters was moved to the original first branch base, and a fortress that was better than Marineford was built. In addition, in order to fight against all nations, the world government has also started a world conscription to re-establish the highest combat power of the Navy. 1 year after the war on the top, the naval headquarters completed the reorganization of the combat power, and Ouchi succeeded as the marshal of the naval headquarters. As for the 3 admirals under his command, they were Tautu, Kyabu and the Green Bull, who was specially promoted in the world conscription. It is worth mentioning that the T-Dolphin had hoped to be promoted to general together with Tautu, but in the process of recruiting in the world, he lost to the Green Bull in a duel. In this world, strength is always respected, the strong live and the weak die. Green Bull has shown the strength to be stronger than the T-Dolphin. Even if the T-Dolphin is old enough, the position of Naval Admiral still falls to the Green Bull's head. Of the reorganization of the naval headquarters, the friction between the nations, the Navy, and the world government continued, and the Revolutionary Army also took this opportunity to fight the autumn wind and make waves. 2 years. Although there has never been a real war that can be regarded as a battle, at most. The captains of the nations confronted the generals of the Navy headquarters, and they both evacuated, but the atmosphere that permeated the whole world did not appear in the slightest loose. Because whether it is the strong or the weak, it is clear that this situation will not last long, and that the confrontation between the nations and the world government will come to an end sooner or later. It will be a battle beyond the top war, sweeping the whole world. Within 2 years. In addition to the world government's world conscription, the expansion of the nations is actually much larger. Strictly speaking, due to the reorganization of the Navy's combat power in the first year, the world government and the entire naval headquarters are in a shrinking form. They don't plan to collide with Wangguo at all, and they are only defensive for Wangguo's expansion. In the first half year, Wangguo took over the territory of the 100 Beast Pirates and the Whitebeard Pirates, and Marco and others finally chose to launch the stage of the sea, and they had no idea of being competitive. As for Fire Fist Ace, after finding the answer to life, he also chose to quit. On the one hand, he no longer wanted to pursue the status of One Piece. On the other hand, Luffy was still moving forward for his dream. I don't want to collide with Luffy. But he is not going to join Luffy, so giving way is the best way. As an older brother, watch his younger brother set sail and chase his dreams. In the second half year, Wangguo took over the territory of the Red Hair Pirates. The red-haired pirates also chose to quit. They were caught between the world government and the world government. The only choice they could make was to join any party, or to withdraw voluntarily. Because once the 10,000 kingdoms and the world government are going to start a decisive battle, no matter which side, it is impossible to see 4 emperors eyeing them, and it will definitely solve them first. Having the strength to fight against Wangguo and the world government, and not wanting to join any party, Shanks finally chose to disband the Red Hair Pirates and withdrew from the New World. That is, when the naval headquarters completed the reorganization of combat power, Wangguo completely ruled the entire New World and brought all the territory of the New World under its command. Philo reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend, and share. Chapter 438, Historical Moment, All Nations Gather. In addition, the power of the nations has also expanded to the North Sea and the West Sea, which is also adjacent to the New World. Has a lot of power because of Germa 6. With the strong backing of the nations, it has almost conquered more than half of the Beihai. As for the West Sea, although there is no foundation, but it is still the primary expansion area after the complete conquest of the New World by the nations. In the second year, Wangguo conquered nearly half of the territory of the West Sea, and friction with the world government and the navy basically occurred in the West Sea. Regarding the New World and the North Sea that have been completely conquered by the nations, the world government gave up its plan to attack the past in a short period of time, and only tried its best to prevent the expansion of the nations in the West Sea. Today's 10,000 kingdoms have nearly 100 subordinate states under their command. Although compared with the world government, it is still a lot less. But there is no doubt that the nations have completely turned into another empire against the world government. Worth mentioning. The past 2 years, Luffy and his gang, who have not been scattered, have not rushed into the New World recklessly. In the Battle of the Top Battle, Luffy and his group all realized their own insignificance. It is very clear that such combat power goes to the New World, and the hope of survival is too small and too small. In the end, under the suggestion of Rayleigh, he followed Rayleigh to learn domineering and experience separately. And this day, Luffy and the others finally completed their training and said goodbye to the Hades Rayleigh in the Chambord Islands. On the coated Wanli Sunshine, I dived into the seabed and headed for the New World. But what puzzled Luffy and his gang was that they dived to the bottom of the sea 10,000 meters and found a passage to the New World, but they didn't find Fishman Island. Why didn't Fishman Island appear? Is it still in a deeper place? Nami stood on the edge of the deck, looking at the deeper seabed. A hint of confusion flashed in her eyes. According to her judgment, and what Kemi mentioned 2 years ago, it should be here, but now there is absolutely no trace of Fishman Island. Kemi said at the time was that as long as you come to this sea area, you will be able to see the Fishman Island, because in this deep sea, only the Fishman Island is luminous. There is no Fishman Island. Luffy was lying on the bow deck in a sullen mood. He wanted to go to the Fishman Island for an adventure, but now he couldn't find the Fishman Island. Of course, he was a little unhappy. Comparison, Sanji is a little more depressed. He still wants to admire the beautiful figures of the legendary mermaids, but now he is only facing the dark seabed. The core of all nations, not far from Cake Island. On the sea here, a beautiful island floats there. If you look closely, it is actually the Fishman Island, which is located below the Red Soil continent. Because the world has declared war on the world government, and the Fishman Island is the world of the world. One of the sites under his command, it is obviously not a good choice to keep Fishman Island in the position directly below the world government and the Navy headquarters. Regardless of whether the world government knows that Shiraishin is the Sea King of ancient weapons, Yagami Kingdu will not want to see Fishman Island in danger. Otherwise, even if he destroys the world government, the government controls the White Star and destroys most of the life in this world with the Sea Kings. Is it still a victory? Relocating the Fishman Island is not too difficult for today's Yagami Kingdu. His ability can also be used underwater, and it is not very difficult to hold up a Fishman Island. Seaside. The mermaid princess Shirahoshi was lying on the beach basking in the sun, while Nina, Reiju and others were also lying beside them in their swimsuits, a rare leisure time. Yagami Kingdu simply lay on Shirai's body. His body weight was like a doll to Shiraishi, and Shirahoshi was even happier in comparison, because he could fight Yagami Kingdu while basking in the sun. Chat. Nina turned a blind eye to Yagami Sudo's actions. They grown up again, Bai Xing. After Yagami Kingdu moved to Fishman Island, he didn't come to Fishman Island very often. He hadn't come over in the last 3 months. I have to say that Bai Xing's body has grown rapidly in the past 2 years, and it has changed every few months. Bigger. The current size is basically no different from the giants. Actually, Bai Xing doesn't want to grow so big. Bai Xing spoke a little sullenly. Her body was much bigger than her elder brother and her parents, and in many cases, of course, it was more convenient to be smaller. I think it's pretty cute. Iori Kingdu smiled. If Shirahoshi's body size was similar to that of a normal human, he would have lost some of his cuteness. Yes, is it? Bai Xing spoke weakly. Iori Kingdu sat there, looked at her and smiled, of course. While Yagami Kingta was chatting with Shirahoshi, Nina, who was lying not far away, suddenly rang. She opened her eyes and answered the phone bug. Well, I see. After hanging up the phone, she came to Bai Xing's side, looked up at Yagami Kingdu who was sitting on Bai Xing's shoulder, and said, "The Straw Hats have appeared in the New World. Of Luffy's gang has little effect on the war between Wangguo and Shifu. Yagami Kingdu pays a little attention because of Nami's existence. If she comes to Wangguo to manage finances in the future, it seems to be a good idea. The choice. Where have they been? Dressrosa." Nina replied softly. Dressrosa is now one of the vassal states under the command of all nations. As long as it doesn't cause any trouble, don't worry too much. If they want to find the history of road signs, let them find it. Yagami Aoto said without caring. The whole New World is already under the rule of all nations, and the contents of the historical stone tablets have been collected almost completely. Nina didn't need to go to Ralph Drew at all. She had already learned the truth about the 100-year blank by translating history, but Yagami Soto was not interested in this. Empire is fine. World government. History is only history after all, and time will never stop. After basking in the sun for a while by the beach, Yagami Kingdu left the beach of Fishman Island and came to the depths of the secret base of Cake Island. It's dark and oppressive here, and in the darkness, there are 555 shadows. They are the incarnation of the beasts, the incarnation of Analu, the incarnation of Katakuri, the incarnation of the Golden Lion, and the incarnation of Edward Wable, the second Whitebeard. After the war on the top, Wable emerged in the New World and became the Shichibukai under the world government, and pursued and killed the old party of the Whitebeard pirates such as Marco, but he ran into the expanding world head-on. Even the world government is reluctant to confront the nations in the first year, because the Navy has not yet completed the reorganization of combat power, not to mention the strength of a Wable who is obviously not very smart. had a tie with the captain of the 3rd Division, Rhodes. Rhodes didn't take advantage of it, and even suffered a small loss. After Shiryu of Rain learned about it, he planned to make a trip, but Kangdu Yagami also got the news at the same time, and stopped Shiryu of Rain and made a trip in person. In front of Yagami Kangdu, Wabel naturally couldn't resist a few tricks. After being defeated, Yagami Sudo took Wabel back to Cake Island and made it into the 5th incarnation, the last incarnation that Murasama could endure. 555 puppet avatars, plus a hurricane avatar. It can be said that the strength of Yagami Kanto alone is enough to defeat all the troops in the Navy headquarters on the bright side and in the dark, including Garp. It's almost time. Looking at the 555 puppet incarnations exuding different but heart-pounding auras, Yagami Kangdu murmured with deep eyes. Incarnations of the puppets are all ready, and the ancient weapons Sea King and Hades are also in his hands. As for the Heavenly King, he searched for it according to the historical stone tablet, but could not find it. Thing lacking a little fire is himself. Caesar studied Kaido's cells and finally developed a special medicine that can greatly improve the strength of the body, but not everyone can bear it. Yagami Kangdu used this potion, but since his physique was already outrageously strong, the improvement was not obvious, only a little bit, but fortunately, there was an improvement, not a disappointment. It could only be said that it was better than nothing. In addition to the medicine, Yagami Kangdu is also continuing to develop and improve his physical potential based on the analysis of Kaido cells. The weakened version of the potion prepared by Caesar, the effect is very good. Gears appeared behind Yagami Kangdu and said to Yagami Kangdu, "It is difficult for humans to adapt, but this problem does not exist with the clone troopers of Germa 66. All clone troopers are equipped with this potion. All increased by 50%. Yagami Kangdu put his hands on his back and responded casually. At the current level, these are actually just trivial matters. What he has to consider now is when to initiate the final battle with the world government. Get ready. Yagami Kangdu looked at the 555 puppet incarnations in the dark, turned around slowly, and looked at the ceiling with a faint gaze, as if seeing the boundless sky through the steel. The decisive battle is in the near future. Hearing Yagami Kangdu's words, even though Gertz's character was very calm, he couldn't help but take a breath at this moment, and a little light flashed in his eyes. Final battle with the world government. When he was following Yagami Kangdu, he never thought that the Yagami Kangdu pirates would be able to reach the level they are today. At that time, what he thought was that he could kill Dofren. Ming is fine. But now, nations have swept the 4 emperors, ruled the whole new world, faced off against the world government, and secretly accumulated such a huge fighting force. The world has been turned upside down. Half a month later, Luffy and his gang arrived in Zou and found the first piece of road sign history in Zou, and then came to Cake Island and found the second piece of road sign history. During this period, Yagami Kangdu just had a nice chat with Name, and let Luffy and his gang leave without stopping them, letting them run towards Wano country. Luffy and his gang found the third piece of road sign history in Wano country. This is the piece that originally belonged to Kaido. Then, they found the last piece of road sign history, and finally reached the final island of Ralph Drew, and found the last secret left by Roger, the Pirate King. If it was put in a few years ago, it was a big news that was enough to shock the world, but now, there is not even a splash of water. The world's attention is no longer on the title of One Piece. Because at the same time when Luffy and others arrived at Ralph Drew, Wonguo was at the core of the Cake Island, and after conquering the New World. The first battle force buildup. The first time. Also the last time. Everyone knows what it means for the military forces of all nations to gather, including the world government. Such a big movement cannot be concealed from the world government. When the nations were gathering their forces, the world government was in a state of turmoil. The 5 old stars who were sitting in the top powerhouse of Pongal Castle, after receiving the news, almost all said the same thing. Words. Finally, it's coming. The front of the Cake Island. When Yagami Kangdu overthrew the thieves, the Golden Lion once threw down an island, which was later flattened by Yagami Kingdo and used as a training ground, and now it is also a gathering place. The entire island was flattened by the sword of Yagami Kingdo, so its levelness and spaciousness are even greater than the square in front of the naval headquarters. At this moment, a lot of people have gathered in this square. Some of these people are porters and handymen living on the Cake Island, and some are from various teams. There's a boat coming. It's the adults of the 7th Division. On the sea in the distance, 7 ships, headed by a ship with a symbol of the number 7, slowly sailed towards the shore. Although some of them have also seen the demeanor of the captain, but today is a large gathering of all the fighting forces of the world. For them, the lowest level of the world's handymen, they can come here, but they can watch the grand occasion up close. The honor. I seem to be the first to come. On the boat with the number 7 on the sail, wearing a white down cloak, Statham walked down, glanced at the square, and smiled. Standing next to him was the vice captain of the 7th Division. He looked at the sea in the distance and said, "Look, the people from the 3rd Division have also arrived." There. 3, on its sails also approached, and behind it was a fleet of 6 ships. He doesn't dare to be late, let's go. Statham smiled, carried a mahogany cane, and walked to the square. The square at the moment was very empty, and Statham led the vice captain, as well as many squad leaders of the 7th Division, all the way to the front of the square. Behind it, there were more than 1,000 members of the 7th Division, all dressed in neat black cloaks, and followed them to the square, with the same number on the back of their coats, 7. Chapter 439, Unprecedented, the Generals Get Together. It's Captain Statham, and the elites of the 7th Division. Some people looked at the neatly dressed 7th Division who appeared on the square from a distance. All of them were calm, and there was a vague sense of majestic momentum, and couldn't help but muttered in awe. And shortly after Statham arrived, Rode, who was wearing the same white down cloak, but with the number 3 behind him, also stepped onto the square. It's so early. Rode led the same about 1,000 people, his subordinates, all the way to the front of the square. Except for the vice captain beside him, who was wearing the same white down coat, the other team members were all black cloaks, neat and tidy, embroidered with the number 3. These all down coats and cloaks were naturally made by Wengguo half a month ago, and they were all distributed a week ago. Captain Rhodes is here too. I heard that Captain Rhodes was in the West Sea not long ago, but the Navy suffered a big loss. I didn't expect to see him now. A look of awe appeared on someone's face. Today's 10,000 kingdoms are in the New World, and the captain's status is second only to Yagami Kingdo, the supreme ruler of all countries. Usually he is a big man who can't be seen from afar. It's always right to come earlier, but luckily you can catch up. Statham smiled at Rhodes. He knew that Rhodes fought a good battle in the West Sea, but afterward he was chased and killed by Kyabu and narrowly retreated. After the battle was over, I received an order for all members of the world to assemble, immediately. Going back here, it was the second one to arrive. If I can't catch up, I'm afraid I don't need to wear this dress. Rhodes pouted and looked at the elites of the 7th Division and their 3rd Division gathered in the square. All of them were all black cloaks with the number 3 embroidered on their backs, and there was a wave in his heart. How long has it been since all the combat power gathered? Even when attacking the beasts Kaido, it was only a gathering of captains, not all members, but this time it was a real gathering of all members, all the combat power and elites of the entire world, all will be assembled here. Even if Yagami Kingdo did not inform the purpose of this gathering, everyone standing in this square is very clear about what they will face. Decisive battle. This world has never seen such a battle in 800 years. Look over there, it's the 2nd and 2nd Division and the 6th Division. Just as many people's eyes were focused on the 3rd and 7th Divisions in the square, someone suddenly looked at the sea and screamed. That direction, a total of 10 ships were slowly approaching. 6 of them had the number 2 feet on their sails, and the remaining 4 had the number 6. 22 and Team 6. It's going to be a good fight again. Shiryu of the Rain, dressed in a white down coat, drank a cigar, stepped off the boat, looked at the members of the 3rd and 7th divisions who had already gathered in the square, and grinned. On the other side, the captain of the 6th division, Nina, did not appear on the boat. The one who got off the boat was the vice captain of the 6th division. Team 6. Shiryu of the Rain glanced at the direction of the 6th division, then withdrew his gaze, took the first step, and walked ahead. The vice captain of the 6th division was also very interested in not walking side by side with Shiryu of the Rain, but led the members of the 6th division, half a step behind Shiryu of the Rain. "Welcome Captain Shiryu," someone standing in front of the square announced loudly to the audience. Without him calling out loudly, both Statham and Rhodes had already seen Shiryu of the Rain approaching. Rhodes once fought against Shiryu of the Rain, but now he has no desire to fight. His character is relatively lazy, and he usually neglects his practice, while Shiryu of the Rain is much more tenacious than him. Cultivation, coupled with the cold fruit, the strength has surpassed him. 3 months ago, Shiryu of the Rain had fought against Aokiji in the West Sea for 3 days and 3 nights, but the outcome was inconclusive. In the end, all the support from the Navy and all countries arrived, so he chose to withdraw his troops and retreat. It doesn't look like it's going to give up this time. Shiryu of the Rain came to Rhodes' left side. "Here is the position of the 2nd division." He glanced at Rhodes and Statham on the right. Statham smiled and said, looking at the meaning of Lord Yagami Kangdu, "It should be that he intends to fight to end the 800-year rule of the world government." He looked at Kaku and the others who were approaching, and looked up at the sky above thoughtfully. The captain of the 6th division didn't come, so it should be still there, above. Among all the squads, the only one who can completely ignore being late, I am afraid it is only Nina, and everyone knows her relationship with Yagami Kangta. Moving around in the square, and although they were all wearing the standard black cloaks, it was impossible to say that it was completely quiet, and there were still voices of discussion going around. And at this moment, I don't know who exclaimed, "Look, heaven!" This sound made everyone lift up to the sky. Shiryu of the Rain also looked at the sky, and then snorted softly, "That guy. Come up with such a tune." Statham and Rhodes also looked up at the sky. I saw, above the sky, 8 ships slowly, like spaceships, finally came to the edge of the square and landed. Fujitora, who was wearing a white down cloak and a purple collar embroidered on it, walked off the boat with a wooden staff. "Ha ha, morning everyone." He smiled at the crowd in the square, and brought the elite of the first team to the leftmost position to stand. Of elites in the first team is obviously more than the other teams. There are nearly 2,000 people, which is also the special of the first team. Of course, the number of elites in the 6th division is only less than 800 people, 800, but it cannot be said that the status of the 6th division is low. Not much different. With Fujitora leading a team to arrive. Those who came to the square already had 5 divisions, namely the 1st division, the 2nd division 2, the 3rd division, the 6th division and the 7th division. Since those who are qualified to stand on this square, or in other words, qualified to wear black cloaks, are the elites of each squad, so the number is not very large, and the position occupied is not large, and there is still a huge open area on the square. However, the ordinary members of each division did not disembark, but all stood on the decks of the ships of each division. Although they could not set foot on the square, for them, they were very excited to be able to stand here and watch the great gathering of the top fighting forces of all nations. Look over there. It's Germa 66, no, the 8th Division Science Unit. Just when countless people were surging, ships appeared again on the sea in the distance. This time there were 10 ships, and the appearance of the ships was obviously different from the ships of other squadrons. The materials seemed to be of a higher grade. There is no doubt that it is the 8th Division under Wang Guo's command, the scientific force. Did they even call in? Statham turned his head to look over and smiled. Among the nations, although the 8th and 9th divisions are nominally equal to the other divisions, they are actually a bit special, and both have great autonomy and autonomy. Today's 8th Division, also known as Germa 66, is responsible for managing and ruling the entire North Sea, far more islands than other divisions. Has been stationed at 9 Snake Island, but the 9th Division has never been dispatched. Even though Wangguo has broken out several local wars with the world government, no member of the 9th Division has ever appeared, so many people almost forgot about the existence of the 9th Division. How could I not come to such a grand event? Gage got off the boat, and the special scientific equipment he was equipped with caught Statham's words from a long distance, and responded calmly to Statham. Next to Gage was the vice captain of the 8th Division, Leiju, and next to him were Niji, Yuji and the others. All of them walked with a calm and resolute expression. Step, 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 following Gage and others off the ship, there are 1,000 clone soldiers. These 1,000 clone soldiers are special products of Germa 66. They are all equipped with scientific equipment, and they have also experienced Caesar. The combined transformation of the fighter is one level more elite than ordinary clone troopers. The 1,000 clone troopers are also all wearing black cloaks with the number 8 embroidered on their backs. All of them are expressionless, and their footsteps are like the real army. They are neat and tidy, and they seem to be better than other squads in terms of momentum. Is that the Invincible Legion of Germa? I heard that they are all clone soldiers who are not afraid of death. And imposing team of the 8th Division, and couldn't help but muttered with a hint of awe. Jaji led the scientific troop and came to the right side of the 7th Division to stand. This is the position belonging to the 8th Division. You guys are here, is Beihai all right? At Gage, who came over and asked with a smile. Gage said calmly, Beihai has all surrendered, and there will be no rebellion. As for the world government, I don't think they have time to go to Beihai to make trouble now. Have assembled their fighting forces, such a huge movement, the world government is not deaf or blind, and I am afraid that it has received news as early as a few days ago. This moment, the world government is bound to conduct a worldwide battle force gathering, and gather all its troops in the Holy Land Marijoa and the new naval headquarters, ready to meet this upcoming decisive battle. Oh, the giant army is here too. Gage was chatting with Statham for a few words, and suddenly his brows trembled, and he looked at the sea behind Statham, far away. There, a huge ship came by the wind and waves. Although there is only one ship, the size of this ship is many times larger than other ships. This is the ship of the 5th Division Giant Force. There is only one ship, but one represents the sweeping the sea, the invincible world's combat power. In Gage's eyes, the other squads, except the captain's combat effectiveness is strong, and the vice captain's combat effectiveness is not weak. The combat effectiveness and cohesion of the ordinary players are not worth mentioning. The only thing that made him feel astonished and amazed was that it was the 5th Division Giant Unit. The number of members of the giant army is very small, but all of them are giants. Each of them has extremely strong combat power, and each of them is not afraid of death. Especially the cadres among them, such as Rhodes and others, are like big killers on the battlefield. Germa 66 can conquer the North Sea. It can be said that the 5th Division has the greatest combat power. Wherever the giant corps goes, any country is frightened. Even the world government and the navy are extremely troubled by this. Boom, boom, boom. The ship of the giant corps leaned on the shore, and a total of 30 giants walked down from the ship one after another. Leader, with a faint arc of lightning flashing between the black hair, is the captain of the 5th Division, Hyerding. The 5th Division is the only team that does not have a black cloak, and the captain does not have a white downcoat, but even without neat uniforms, this unit is still full of fierce and wild spirit, which makes countless people feel in awe. Even today, the giant corps has long since become an existence known as the Invincible Corps in this world. Long time no see, Helding. Gage greeted Hyerding. A year ago, after the giant corps assisted the 8th Division in conquering the North Sea, they evacuated from the North Sea and entered the West Sea battlefield. Halding looked down at Gage. For Gage, not seeing each other for a year is a long time, but for the giants whose concept of time is different from that of human beings, it is like having a meal. Hasn't Master Yagami Kengdu arrived yet? Rhodes stood behind Helding and said. He was the first giant to get the devil fruit. Although he was below Helding, his status was the vice captain of the 5th division. In the conversation between the captains, the vice captains are very tacit and don't interrupt, but the giants don't have so many ideas, they have been going straight. It is estimated that we will wait until everyone arrives before coming over. Rhodes shrugged. The giants are giants, and they are not the same as humans. Fujitora's expression was as usual, and Shiryu of Rain didn't care much. Well, there's still the 4th division that hasn't arrived yet. Rhodes looked at the square, because he was a giant. Standing there, he could see it at a glance, and he could clearly see that the square was 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7 and 8, all of which were there, but there was still one missing in the center. Team. And almost as soon as his voice fell, a large number of footsteps passed in the direction of Cake Island. The crowd looked up. I saw Jeers, the captain of the 4th division, leading about 300 members of the 4th division, walking towards the square. These 300 members are not the elite of the 4th division, but all the members of the 4th division. As a medical unit, the number of the 4th division is the smallest except for the 5th division, but because of the particularity of the medical unit, its status is no different from other divisions. Moreover, in the eyes of other captains, the relationship between Gelds and Yagami Kingta is the closest captain besides Nina, the core base of Cake Island and the core palace of Wano Kingdom, but even the captain is forbidden to enter, only with the exception of Gertz and Nina. Philo reminds you, 3 things to read, collect, recommend, and share. Chapter 440th, World's Attention, the World Government Assembles. With the arrival of the 4th squad, the entire square, 8 divisions, 8 teams, showed different formations, and because they were all elites from different divisions, they all had a depressing momentum. The white down coats of the captains and the black standard capes of the team members were all lined up on the square, and the aura that condensed together seemed to be suffocating. Time passed by little by little. Although the people present were the elites and captains of the various divisions under Wan Guo's command, no one showed any impatience when they waited here, because everyone knew who they were waiting for. Started as an ordinary pirate hunter, then became a pirate and roamed the sea, and then arrived in the New World, laid down the waters of Wangguo, and finally established today's Wangguo, confronting the world government across the sea. Can say. Even the legends created by Roger One Piece are not comparable to those of Yagami Kangdu. Moreover, Roger has been dead for 22 years, but Yagami Kangdu is still alive, and it is the legend of his prime. While everyone in the square is quietly waiting for Yagami Kangdu's arrival, on the sea in the distance suddenly another ship appeared. There's another ship coming. It doesn't seem to be ours. No, that seems to be the 9th division that has never appeared. Some people looked at the approaching ship, and there was a little confusion in their eyes, and some people recognized the origin of the ship, and their eyes couldn't help but flicker. The 9th squad, which has never been seen before, even came today. When the boat docked on the shore, a beautiful woman in a purple cheongsam stepped off the boat. Is that the legendary pirate queen? No, it should be said, captain of the 9th division, Boya Hancock. Someone woke up from Hancock's charm, a trace of cold sweat overflowed from his forehead, and he spoke slowly and cautiously. Hancock led the female warriors of 9 Snake Island to the square step by step. She didn't turn her head, but the corner of her eyes swept across everyone in the square. They're all ugly men. After just one glance, she looked back. Is that the female warrior of the legendary 9 Snake Island? It seems not bad. Gage stood at the forefront of the 8th division, watching Hancock lead many female warriors to the position to his right, and said with a sideways glance. Among the nations, Gaji, as the captain of the 8th division, although not closely related to the other 7th divisions, still has frequent contacts after all. But the 9th division is completely hidden in the dark, no matter whether it is a war or a major event. It has never appeared, and even most of the captains present are seeing the Empress for the first time. Hancock glanced at Jaji, then withdrew her gaze, and did not intend to communicate with Jaji. She came this time only to destroy the war of the world government. Although Nine Snake Island is isolated from the world, and she seldom leaves Nine Snake Island, she still gets a steady stream of news about the sea from Granny Za. Yagami Kangdu destroys the beast pirates. Yagami Soto declares war on the world government at the naval headquarters. Single thing clearly, and even knows about the local war between the nations and the world government in the past 2 years. 4. This kind of thing, she can't ignore it, because in her heart, the most hated point is the Tianlong people who dominate this world. And in the past, Tianlong people represent the sky and the world. No one is qualified to challenge the world, not even the 4 emperors. The world government is like a giant mountain that cannot be surmountable, standing there, standing still. It also made her feel numb and desperate, never thinking about revenge. But now, of destroying the Tianlong people has appeared. The hatred hidden in the deepest numbness and despair was ignited in an instant. Almost as soon as she got the news, she decided to get involved. She could not pay attention to other things, the local war between the nations and the world government. She may not participate, but of course she will come to invade the Holy Land Mary Joa. That place, that has caused her pain for more than 10 years, this time, it will be completely destroyed. Hancock's appearance caused a lot of confusion. Small riot. Although Hancock did not deliberately release his charm, it still caused many people in the square to lose their minds. All those who can stand on this square are the elites of all nations. Although they will be affected by Hancock's charm, if Hancock does not deliberately use his abilities, it will not cause too great an impact. Can bear. Time continued to pass, and another half-hour passed in a flash. Finally, a voice sounded from above the square. It's all here. I saw a special white cloud floating tool that landed slowly from Jishuang, and there were 2 figures standing on the island cloud. One was Yagami Kangdu, and the other did not need to ask, of course it was Nina. No, letting Nina go to the 6th division ahead of time is to let her come down directly with him, which is of course the opinion of Yagami Kanto. The captains and vice teams of 9 9th divisions. Seeing Nina standing behind Yagami Kangta's side, her expressions were different, but no one said anything. They all silently looked back. Who was standing at the forefront of the 9th division, stayed on Nina for a while, then snorted and looked away. The square at the moment, the giants of the 5th division are exactly in the center, and then on the 2 sides are 12, 34 and 67, 89, 8, a total of 8 divisions, lined up respectively. Actually, there's no need to be so serious. 8 gods. Kangdu stepped on the white clouds and came to the front of the square. He glanced at the people in the square, smiled lightly, and said, "But you must have aura. How can you say that you are also the most elite members of Wang Guo's command?" Hearing Yagami Kangdu's words, Shiliu of Rain and the others did not change their expressions, but the expressions of those elite players in black cloaks were all lifted. For them, Yagami Kangdu is a living legend. Many of them have never seen Yagami Kangdu with their own eyes, and they can hear Yagami Kangdu calling them the elites of all nations. In my heart, I felt enough honor. I don't think I need to say what to do in this call today, and you should have guessed it. The 8 gods. Kangdu looked down at the people below, and said in a flat tone, "The New World is already our territory, and the North Sea and the West Sea are now almost all under the command of Wang Guo, but there are still the East China Sea and the South China Sea, as well as the first half of the Great Route is still firmly guarded by the world government. But unfortunately, Wang Guo does not intend to spend any more time with the world government, or it is no longer necessary to spend any more." The 8 gods. Kangdu looked at the crowd in the square, opened his arms slightly, and said, "Look at all of you who are standing here. I think, if there is one more war, it will end all this. And the goal of this war is to destroy the Holy Land Mary Joa." Following Yagami Kangta's words, they swayed across the square, and whether it was the elites of the numerous squads or the captains such as Shiliu of the Rain, they couldn't help but feel a surge of excitement. Finally, this day has come. From struggling to survive on the sea, to the struggle for hegemony with the 4 emperors in the New World, Wang Guo has finally come to this day, and it is only the last battle to completely conquer this world. Many people present, once in their hearts they all feel that conquering the sea, conquering the Great Root, and becoming the Pirate King are already a very distant thing, but in the blink of an eye, they have already crossed all this. The sea has already been treaded underfoot. There is only one enemy left, and that is the world government that has ruled this world for 800 years. Red Earth Continent. This is the central point where the Great Root and the Red Continent meet, and is also the location of the Holy Land Marijoa and the base of the original one branch of the Navy, and the current headquarters of the new Navy. Different from Marin Fodor, the new naval headquarters and the Holy Land are closer, almost directly below the Red Earth Continent. It can be said that they are connected together, only separated by the height of the Red Earth Continent. At this moment, on the Red Soil Continent, the world government is gathering its forces. On the fortress is the commander-in-chief of the world government's entire army, Cyborg Kong, who will take over the command of the battlefield for the upcoming decisive battle against the nations. No way. The Navy alone can't fight against the current world, so the Aokiji as a naval marshal is obviously not enough. Qualified to be in charge of the post of commander-in-chief in wartime. Moreover, in this battle, Garp chose to withdraw from the pension and had no plans to participate. He only guarded justice, not Tianlongren. Without Garp, the Navy has lost another top combat capability. Haven't the elite of the Nane branch arrived yet? Steel Skeleton stood on the fortress, looking at the coming and going Navy and the government troops under the world government and said in a deep voice. Report to the Marshal, it's almost here, it will be there in half an hour at most. Shen Shengwei, a rear admiral next to him, reported. Kong nodded and asked again, where is Vegapunk? Has the combat power he studied transferred over? It has come. The Vice Admiral, who is in charge of liaison with the scientific force, responded. Gang Gukong nodded and said, that is a powerful force comparable to Chiwahai. Even if Chiwahai is torn apart, it can replace the existence of Chiwahai as the main force. In the last 2 years, the Shichibukai project has been completely declared bankrupt. Chiwahai died, wounded, quitted, wandered, and even though there were 2 people sitting in Chiwahai's position, none of them came to this emergency call. Without a doubt, Chiwahai simply does not want to conflict with Wangguo. In a war of this level in which the nations and the world government collide head-on, even if they are Chiwahai, it is very likely that they will become cannon fodder. With the issuance of orders one by one, the elites of the Navy and government army finally completed their assembly on the Red Soil Continent. A total of 300,000 elite soldiers. This is not 300,000 ordinary soldiers, but most of them are elites, of which the Navy occupies 200,000 and the government army has 100,000. Naval troops, in the order of rank, stand in different positions before and after. The lowest-ranked sailors and non-commissioned officers stand in the last row of the team, the officers in the cloaks of justice are in the front, and the generals are in the front. And in front of the generals, there are a total of 20 lieutenant generals of the Navy headquarters, and the one standing in the center is one of the alternate generals, Cha Do, who is naturally the first among the lieutenant generals. And standing in front of the T-Dolphin are the 3 admirals of the naval headquarters, the highest combat power of the world government. Peach Rabbit, Kizaru, and Green Bull, the lieutenant generals are all here. And the generals. From all over the world, the elites in the various branch bases, looking at the 20 lieutenant generals of the headquarters standing in front of the team, and the admiral of the Navy who are known as the highest combat power, cannot help but feel a little emotional. It is worth mentioning that among the 20 lieutenant generals of the headquarters, one person has also become an alternate general, whose name is comparable. As a disciple of Garp, in the 2 years he fought with Wangguo, he has gone through countless battles, breaking through himself many times in the battle, and now he has mastered the top knowledge and domineering ability to predict the future. Although his strength is much lower than that of Luffy, who is already the Pirate King now, he still stands in the position of the alternate general, and is also known as the person who is most likely to succeed Kizaru. Report to Marshal Kong, the combat power of the naval headquarters has been assembled. Aokiji stood at the forefront of the Navy camp, wearing a Navy Justice cloak embroidered with the golden epaulets representing the Admiral, reporting to the steel bone empty voice. Gang Kuokong used to be the Admiral of the Navy, and when Gang Kuokong served as the Admiral, he went from Major General to Lieutenant Admiral. 20 years have passed now. Cyborg Kong is already the General Marshal of the world government, and he has also become the Marshal of the Navy headquarters. Good. Cyborg Kong nodded and turned to look to the other side. Report to Marshal Kong, the government army's combat power has been assembled. The person who made the report was a dark-skinned man who was the supreme commander of the government army. In this world where the sea occupies most of the area, the power of the government army is much worse than that of the Navy, and the usual task is to protect the Red Soil continent and the Tianlong people. Can say. The government army often exists because of the Tianlong people. But because of this, even if the government army is much weaker than the Navy, it still has enough fighting power. Its highest leader, the commander-in-chief of the government army, is comparable in combat effectiveness to Aochi and others, and the deputy commander's combat effectiveness is not much different, so he can be regarded as an alternate general. Everyone, according to the order, set up the formation, and waited for the formation. Before the enemy shows up, there must be no slack for a moment. Steel Skeleton opened his mouth to the assembled Navy and government troops, and his slightly old voice exploded in the square like thunder. Yes. The Navy and government troops responded in unison. After giving orders to the Navy and the government troops to take their places and wait in full force, Kong Kuo looked back again. There are 10 teams in total. Chapter 441, The Prelude to the War, Start. The espionage agencies under the world government, referred to as troops, have all assembled from 0 to 9, you are here. Gang Gukong glanced at everyone, and his eyes stopped on the person in the center and the front of the team. Other party is the new commander of 0. Although his status is one level lower than his general marshal, he belongs directly to the 5 old stars. Without an order, he cannot command at will. Master Wu Laoxing has ordered, and all of us, including us, will be dispatched under the command of Marshal Kong. The commander-in-chief spoke to the steel hollow voice. Gang Ji Yukong is not surprised by this, since the 5 old stars have already handed over all the tasks of formation and command to him. He will definitely not create another army that can act at will. In such extraordinary times, the troops must also obey his dispatch. Then the security work of the Red Earth continent will be handed over to you, as soon as any trace of the enemy is found, immediately. Report to me, and if it's too late, just release the flare. Steelbone is empty and waits at 0, Ling Dao. And other members of the spy agency, each responded with a cold and determined look, and then quickly assigned their respective tasks. So far, the combat power of the world government has also been completely assembled. Holy Land Mary Joa. Inside the Pongal Castle, the War Command headquarters. After the formation was completed, the Admiral and the Marshal of the Navy, the General Marshal of the Army Gang Kuo, and the Chief of Staff he and others all gathered in this office. Mary Joa is adjacent to the naval headquarters. The naval headquarters can be used as the first line of defense, but in order to prevent them from directly attacking the Holy Land from behind, the Navy headquarters is only used as a strategic point. When necessary, all combat forces must be withdrawn to the Holy Land. On the table and supported the table with both hands. Withdrawing all the combat power to the Holy Land is equivalent to abandoning the Navy headquarters. Aokiji and the others present looked a little unsightly, but there was no way. For the government, the Holy Land was naturally more important than the Navy headquarters. The question is, how exactly are they going to attack? Chief of Staff Crane put his arms on the table, folded his hands to support his chin, and said, they have too many offensive methods, and it is impossible to effectively respond and prepare for every possibility. Gang Gukong was silent for a while, and said, it is indeed the case, so I can only try my best to deal with the most likely situation. The many admirals in the Navy who were present were all stunned when they heard the words. And at this time, a vice admiral suddenly rushed into the conference room, with a nervous face and a cold sweat on his forehead, said, "Report. The ships and seagulls that we monitored Wangguo were all shot down, and now we have lost all sources of intelligence. Sure enough, it won't let us easily perceive their intentions." The chief of the general staff, Crane, did not show any unexpected expressions. When Whitebeard attacked, he also sank all the surveillance warships and seagulls. "Everyone is seated." General Marshal Gang Ji Yukong suddenly stood up straight, and said in a serious tone, "They are coming. Whether the world still exists or not depends on everyone here." Aokiji took a deep breath and did not speak. Huang Yuan took a sip of tea and added in his heart that he really wanted to go home and retire. Taotu didn't show any emotion. One hand always touched the scabbard hanging around his waist, feeling the slightest coldness from the scabbard. Soon, everyone in the conference room pushed the door and walked out, each going to a different location. Kazaru, Momotu, and Aokiji, the three of them returned to the Navy headquarters as the frontline fighting force guarding the Navy headquarters. The speed and adaptability of the three of them are also the most suitable. Once the nations directly attack the Holy Land Mary Joa, they can also arrive at the Holy Land directly from the naval headquarters at any time. The Green Bull was left in the Holy Land Mary Joa, and was paired with the alternate General T. Dolphin. The two were responsible for the defense behind the Holy Land, because the T. Dolphin had the ability to predict the future. Once it was discovered that Wangguo was raiding from the rear of the Red Earth continent, it would also be possible to do so. Respond as quickly as possible. On both sides of the Holy Land are government troops and spy agencies. As for the military commander-in-chief Cyborg Kong, he, together with the 5 old stars and others, sits at the core of the Holy Land Mary Joa to deal with any possible situation. Disperse troops to attack from all directions, or concentrate troops to raid from one direction. How would you choose, Yagami Kangdu? Steel Skeleton stands at the top of the castle, with deep eyes, where he can overlook the entire Holy Land Mary Joa, and everything is under his eyes. Time passed gradually. 1 hour, 2 hours. Although all the combat power of the world government has been reduced to the Holy Land Mary Joa, the intelligence troops are still scattered on the sea. At this moment, even if they can obtain any information about the location of the forces of the nations, are worth thousands of dollars. Sacrificing a warship for this is nothing at all. But 4 or 5 hours have passed in a flash, and the reconnaissance warships scattered in the New World have not been able to detect any information about the nations. The huge military force assembled by the nations suddenly seemed to disappear, hiding in the darkness at this moment, and it could appear from any direction at any time. Nervous, depressed. Various breathless atmospheres permeated the entire Holy Land Mary Joa. Time went on. Gang-ji Yukong and the others did not relax their vigilance because they had not obtained any information, because the chief of staff he had analyzed that Yagami Kangdu had always acted resolutely. There will never be delay. Today is bound to be the day of the decisive battle. Moreover, in this decisive battle, Wangguo had already issued an announcement to the whole world a day before that. In this battle, the world government would be completely destroyed. Just as Steel Skeleton's eyes were deep and sharp, overlooking the entire Holy Land Mary Joa, sitting at the core, waiting for the attack of the nations, he suddenly realized that something was wrong. The air seemed to be a little more oppressive. This is not the suppression of the atmosphere, but the air becomes suppressed, as if the air density of the entire Holy Land suddenly began to rise. There was nothing at first, but as time went by, the density of the air began to rise and rise continuously, making the complexion of Gang Gukong suddenly change. He vaguely thought of something. Could it be that? The Steel Bone Kong, whose face changed drastically, suddenly looked up at the sky. And almost at the same time, the chief, the person with the natural air fruit ability, as well as the T-Dolphin, Kebi, and the others who have seen and heard to the extreme, all looked up suddenly. Crap. The T-Dolphin's face changed drastically. Guarding the naval headquarters, also had a shocked expression, and said, "It turned out to be such an attack. I didn't expect it at all." After the T-Dolphin, Kebi and the others reacted first. The green pheasant and the other people were almost aware of it, and they all looked up to the sky. Countless lieutenant generals of the Navy headquarters, as well as the government's army, all had expressions of horror and disbelief on their faces. Only see. Above the sky, at an unknown height, a dark shadow appeared, and the shadow was falling towards the Holy Land Mary Joa. Look closely, it is not a shadow, it is an island, a large island enough to carry a country. The island is falling from the sky. There is no doubt that this is the attack from all countries, the prelude to the decisive battle. Damn it. It was possible to move an island to the sky. Cyborg Kong's complexion became very ugly. It's not that they did not expect that one will attack from the sky, but from the sky, there will be a time. This time is enough for the Holy Land's combat power to quickly gather. However, from the sky, they had never expected such a scene before. To be able to get an island into the sky, and it's still such a large island, isn't this the ability that the dead golden lion has? Could it be that the Piao Piao fruit was obtained by Wan Guo with the ability of this devil fruit, but it was a huge trouble. Trouble. The Holy Land is in danger. Of Tautu and the others changed, they all jumped up from the Navy headquarters, stepped on the moon, and rushed towards the Holy Land Mary Joa above the Red Earth continent. The falling speed of the island is getting faster and faster, as if the sky is falling. Many Tianlong people in the Holy Land saw this scene, and their faces were full of fear. They are Tianlong people, the descendants of the gods who created this world. How could they encounter such a terrifying disaster? Some Tianlong people, and even fainted from fright. There are also some psychological, older Tianlong people who have a relatively strong tolerance, but at the moment his face is extremely ugly, and he is holding a delicate jade in his hand. That their rule will end here. No, impossible. The Lord is still in the Holy Land, and in the past 800 years, after countless storms, the world government has never been shaken, and no one can overthrow the world government. There is absolutely no way someone will push their Tianlong people from the status of world nobles. It's really terrible to throw an island down. Huang Yuan was the first to come to the sky above the Holy Land. His arms were staggered in front of him, and the dazzling golden light gathered, and directly hit the island with an 8-foot Changguyu. Boom, boom, boom. A series of roars and explosions erupted in the sky. However, it was obviously wishful thinking to stop a large island that fell from the sky with just one of the 8-foot Changgu jade of the yellow monkey. The air is compressed so tightly, which is exactly what I want. The gleaming light in the eyes of the chief's chief, he let out a low voice, and threw his hands towards the sky continuously, which was a high-density air compression cannon after another. Just like the 8-foot Changgu jade of the Japanese ape, the entire island exploded continuously, and countless stones smashed and shattered, turning into dust. Net. Tautu didn't say too much. The moment he rushed to the Holy Land, he directly slashed out with a sword, and the sword energy intertwined in an instant. Island. At the same time, Aokiji is also an icicle, bombarding the sky. The top fighting forces under the world government took action one after another, and for a time it seemed like the most beautiful fireworks in the world, intertwined and exploded above the sky. Kacha, Kacha. After suffering so many attacks from top combat power, the falling island finally couldn't bear it anymore, and there was a tendency to crack, spreading in the blink of an eye. It's going to shatter. Watch out. The commander-in-chief Cyborg Kong, who had never made a move, gave a low drink. It's not difficult to break the island, but after the island is broken, the fragments will not disappear, but will continue to fall, causing devastating disasters to the Holy Land. So if you want to resist, you must also block these fragments. Glacier. Era. Dark prison. Air swamp. At the moment when the island shattered, many admirals and top combat powers changed their methods. Ice cubes rose in the blink of an eye, the air was dense, and the gravitational force was distorted. Of the countless collapsed fragments were directly frozen, some were held up, and many were broken into even more broken fragments and scattered to the periphery of the Holy Land. That is, at the moment when the island shattered. A large number of black shadows appeared in the sky. They were people standing on the island. As the island was shattered, they also suffered attacks from Aokiji and others. Gravity, knife. It's raining. Quote, quote. Various abilities are intertwined in the sky, colliding with the methods of Aokiji and others. Boom, boom, boom. As if the world was about to be destroyed, a deafening roar exploded between the heavens and the earth, causing many heavenly dragon people in the Holy Land to faint and bleed from their ears. In the roar, countless fragments splashed around, and gunpowder smoke filled the sky, covering the blue sky behind. Whoosh, whoosh. In the smoke, the next second the roar stopped, a large number of figures fell from the sky, and they fell directly onto the square of the Holy Land Mary Joa. I saw that the number of this group of people was not many, but everyone was wearing a black cloak, and behind the cloak there were handwritings such as 1, 2, 2 feet, 3, 4, and so on. In black cloaks showed no signs of confusion, but the number 1 fell into one area, and the number 2 feet fell into an area, which looked extremely neat and orderly. And standing in front of this group of black cloaks, is a completely different white from black. It is a white down cloak, and there are also handwritings such as 1, 2, 3, 4 on the back. Looks like you're ready. Fujitora stood in front of the elite of the first team, holding the scabbard of the cane in one hand and the handle of the knife in the other, keeping the blade drawn. Half of the posture, half bowed, eyes closed, tone of voice calmly speaking. Wangguo, the first team will join the team. Of the Rain was holding a cigar and grinning. He had already drawn his sword, followed Fujitora and said, 2nd Division to Xingjun, join us. 2nd Division Support Troop, join us. Medical troops of the 4th Division, join us. Jeers's face was slightly raised, and he added in a calm tone, don't think that the medical troops will not fight. Crackle. Haire's figure was covered with thunder and arcs intertwined, falling in front of many giants, and his voice roared and muffled in the Holy Land like Honglei. The 5th Division Giant Troop, join us. Hee hee, the 6th Division is here. Nina was wearing her usual blue-purple clothes today. She smiled and didn't speak like the previous 5 divisions. Obviously, she didn't like to participate in this kind of self-reporting. Captain Nina, this way you will lose your momentum. Rode spread his hands towards Nina, showing a helpless expression, then turned to look at Cyborg Kong and the others. Everyone is okay, the special unit of the 7th Division, join us here. So, can your world government survive this war, or will it be destroyed? Gaji, wearing a white cloak embroidered with the number 8, stepped forward and said with deep eyes, the 8th Division's scientific troops are here. It's time to stop what happened back then. Wearing a gorgeous cheongsam, Hancock stood in front of the female warriors of 9 Snake Island, looking at this holy place, Mary Joa, with cold indifference in the depths of his eyes. Is no need for Fujitora and others to report their own family, Gang Gukong and others have already recognized it. If they have been fighting for more than 2 years and still can't recognize who their opponent is, then they don't need to be the world government and the world high-level decision-makers in the Navy. All of a sudden, you have invaded the Holy Land, and you are careless. Steel Gukong's face was very ugly. The original defense was to keep Wangguo from the Holy Land. If Wangguo tried to forcefully rush in, they would fall into their ambush and pay a heavy price. But no one expected that Wangguo came to the island with a trick, and directly sent the captains and elites of the 9th Division directly into the Holy Land Mary Joa. I haven't seen you for many years, Marshal Kong. Shiliu of Rain held the hilt of his sword and looked at Gang Kukong from a distance. He had seen Gang Kukong, and he used to be Gang Kukong's subordinate, but now it has become a complete hostile. Gang Gukong said coldly, I guarded the advanced city for you, but I had high hopes. I didn't expect you to betray the government and my promotion for you. Promotion. Shiliu of the Rain smiled, and he grinned. I'm locked up in the infinite hell on the 6th floor of the Push City. how can I be promoted like this? That's really great. Seeing what Genji Yukong wanted to say, the smile on Shiryu Rain's face suddenly changed to indifference and cruelty, and said, there is no need to say more nonsense. He swung the sword in front of him, and said with a cold eye. Be aware. World government. Isn't Yagami Kingdo here? Cyborg Kong's eyes swept across Shiryu of the Rain and the others, searching for the trace of Yagami Kingdo, but he couldn't find it, and his heart could not help but feel dark. He is not afraid of Yagami Kingdo appearing in front of him, but he is worried that Yagami Kingdo is hidden in the dark, because according to the intelligence analysis, Yagami Kingdo has some kind of hidden ability that can't even be discovered by seeing and hearing. It seems to be hidden by folding space. But at this moment, he didn't even bother to look for Yagami Kingdo. Almost as soon as Shiryu the Rain's voice fell, the elites of Wanguo, led by the captains of the various divisions, launched a fierce attack.